My uncle called me on a Tuesday morning in October, right when I was about to clock into my shift at the hospital. I almost didn't pick up. We weren't close. Not the way you'd expect an uncle and niece to be, and his name on my screen felt like a wrong number more than anything else. Tess, he said, there's something you need to know about your mother's estate. My mother had been gone for 4 months. I stepped outside the sliding doors of the ER entrance and let the cold air hit me. What about it? Not on the phone, he said. Can you come by the house this weekend? I told him I'd think about it. Then I hung up and went inside and spent 8 hours drawing blood and updating charts and pretending the call hadn't happened. That's what I did back then. I pretended. My name is Tess. I'm 31 years old, and until about a year ago, I thought I had a pretty clear picture of my family. My mother raised me mostly alone after my father left when I was 6. We were never wealthy. She worked as a bookkeeper for a small real estate firm and clipped coupons and drove a car that made a noise every time she accelerated above 50. But she was careful with money in the way people are when they've never had a cushion to fall back on. She saved. She planned. She told me once that she wanted to make sure I never had to start from zero the way she did. When she died, a stroke sudden and completely without warning, I was the one who found her. I'd stop by on a Sunday morning to bring her coffee and a crossword book she'd asked for. She was on the kitchen floor. I called 911, but there was nothing anyone could do. After that, everything became noise. The funeral arrangements, the sympathy cards, the casseroles from neighbors, the calls from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. My older brother handled most of it. He lived closer to her, had a good relationship with her accountant, knew where she kept her files. He and his wife stepped in, and I let them because I was barely functioning. Grief is like that. It makes you hand things over to whoever seems like they know what they're doing. My brother's name is Marcus. He's 40. He coached Little League for 3 years, and he has a firm handshake, and he volunteers at a food drive every Thanksgiving, and I used to think those things told me everything I needed to know about a person. I was wrong about that. The weekend came, and I drove to my uncle's house, my mother's younger brother, Ray. He lives about 40 minutes outside the city in a small ranch house with a dog named after a president and a workshop in the garage, where he builds furniture nobody asked for. He's not a complicated man. That's what I always liked about him. He met me at the door before I even knocked. "Come in," he said. I made coffee. We sat at his kitchen table, and he pushed a manila folder across to me without saying anything first. I opened it. Inside was a copy of my mother's will, or what I thought was her will. I'd seen a version of it already. Marcus had shown me a document at the attorney's office 2 weeks after she died. It had left the house and most of her savings split between us. I'd walked away with what I thought was my share, about $40,000, which had already been deposited into my account. The house had been listed and sold within 60 days. But the document in my uncle's folder was different. It was longer. It had an addendum I'd never seen. And in it, my mother had set aside an additional account, a brokerage account I didn't know existed, worth just over $280,000, left entirely to me. I read it twice. Then I looked up at my uncle. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "She gave it to me," he said. "About a year before she died, told me to hold onto it in case anything ever happened. Said she didn't want Marcus to be the one controlling things if she was gone." He wrapped his hands around his mug. I didn't think he would actually do something. I thought she was just being cautious. "Does Marcus know about this account?" "He had to," Ray said. "He was the one who closed it. I didn't confront my brother right away. I know some people would have. But I was a nurse, and nurses learn early that you don't move until you know what you're dealing with. You assess first. You look at the whole picture." I called the brokerage firm that Monday. I gave them my name and my mother's account number, which was listed on the addendum. The woman on the phone was polite but confused. "That account was closed in July," she said. "July was 1 month after my mother died. 6 weeks after the will was supposed to have been filed with the probate court." "Can you tell me who authorized the closure?" I asked. She put me on hold. When she came back, she said she couldn't give me that information over the phone, but that I could submit a written request with proof of identity and my relationship to the account holder. I sent that request the same afternoon. While I waited, I started making calls. I reached out to a probate attorney, not the one Marcus had used, a different one, someone my coworker recommended who specialized in estate disputes. Her name was Catherine Voss, and she had a voice like she'd heard every version of this story before, which it turned out she had. I sent her the 2 documents, the will Marcus had shown me, and the one my uncle had. She called me back within 24 hours. "These are both signed and notarized," she said. "But the one your uncle has is dated 8 months later, which makes it the controlling document. The one your brother presented was superseded." "So he used the wrong will." She paused. "That's one way to put it. The other way is that he knew about the later will, had access to it, and chose not to present it." I sat with that for a while. "What does that mean legally?" I asked. "It means he may have committed fraud on the probate court," she said. "It means the assets that were distributed from that brokerage account were distributed improperly. And it means you have a very strong case for recovery. I want to tell you what it feels like to find this out about a sibling. Not an abstract sibling. Not the dramatic movie version of a scheming older brother. My actual brother. The one who taught me to ride a bike. The one who called me on my birthday every year and asked about my work and pretended to understand what I did. The one who cried at our mother's funeral and held my hand during the service. You cycle through about 100 different feelings in no particular order. There's shock, which feels like static. Then there's a specific kind of grief that's different from losing someone to death. It's losing who you thought someone was. Then there's anger, which is cleaner and simpler and actually helps you move forward. I got to the anger by Thanksgiving. My brother called to ask if I was coming to his house for the holiday. His wife was making her famous stuffing. His kids were going to be there. I told him I had to work. He said he was sorry to hear that. He said he'd save me a plate. I got off the phone and sat on my couch in the dark for a long time. Then I texted Catherine Voss. "I'm ready to move forward." The written response from the brokerage firm arrived in early December. It confirmed what I'd already been told. The account had been closed in July and the funds transferred to an account in my brother's name. $283,000. Gone in a single wire transfer. He hadn't hidden it well. That was the thing that surprised me most. He'd used his own name, his own bank account. He'd apparently assumed I'd never look, never question, never find my uncle's copy of the real will. He wasn't wrong that I almost didn't look. Catherine filed the estate challenge in mid-December. My brother was served 2 days before Christmas. I know the timing sounds deliberate. It wasn't. That's just when the paperwork was ready. He called me on Christmas Eve. I was at a friend's apartment, helping her assemble IKEA furniture and eating delivery Thai food, and my phone buzzed on the coffee table with his name on the screen. My friend looked at it. I looked at it. "Do you want me to leave the room?" she asked. "No," I said, and I picked up. He didn't say hello. He said, "What is this?" "You know what it is," I said. "Tess." His voice had that older brother tone, the one that had always made me feel like I was overreacting to something. "This is going to destroy the family." "What family?" I said. He was quiet. "You took money that was meant for me," I said. "Mom specifically set it aside. She made a new will. She gave Uncle Ray a copy because she already knew that you might do exactly this. That's not what happened." "Then explain to me what happened." He didn't. He tried a few different angles. The estate was complicated. There were fees he'd had to cover. He'd planned to talk to me about it. He'd meant to, but none of it held together. And I think somewhere in there he knew it. You can hear it in someone's voice when they've stopped believing their own story. "I have the documents, Marcus," I said. "Catherine has the documents. The court has the documents. You transferred $283,000 out of an account that belonged to me, and you presented a superseded will to the probate court to make sure I'd never find out." The silence on his end was very long. "I need you to not do this," he said finally. His voice had changed. The authority was gone. He sounded suddenly like someone who understood exactly what he'd done. Tess, please. I'm sorry, I said. And I meant it, in the way that you can mean something and still know it doesn't change anything. I'll talk to you through Catherine from now on. I hung up. My friend handed me a spring roll. We went back to the IKEA furniture. I want to be honest about what the legal process is actually like, because the way things get resolved in stories always sounds cleaner than it is. It's not fast. It's not satisfying in the moment. There are filings and responses and continuances and phone calls from Catherine where she explains the same procedural thing 3 different ways until I understand it. There are moments where I second guess everything. There are nights where I lie awake, running through every memory I have of my brother and trying to figure out when it started. This willingness to take from someone who trusted him. What I eventually decided was that it probably didn't start anywhere specific. I think people don't become a certain way on one particular day. I think they just keep making small choices that move them in a direction, and one day they're standing somewhere they couldn't have imagined if they'd been asked at the start. He pleaded no contest in March to a charge of fraudulent transfer of estate assets. The probate court had already issued an order requiring the funds to be returned. His attorney negotiated a repayment plan. The $283,000 plus interest, plus legal fees, paid back over 5 years. He was placed on 3 years of formal probation. He lost his real estate license, which he'd had for 12 years. I know some of the people who watched this process unfold thought the outcome wasn't severe enough. I understand that. Catherine told me from the beginning that criminal prosecution for estate fraud is difficult to obtain and that civil recovery was the more realistic path. I made peace with it. What I got back wasn't just money. It was proof that what he did was real, that I hadn't imagined it, that the court saw it the same way I did. There's something about being believed by a system you were afraid wouldn't listen. It settles something in you. The money was restored to an account in my name over the following months, transferred incrementally as the repayment plan required. I didn't spend it for a long time. It sat there while I figured out what I wanted to do with it. Eventually, I put a down payment on a 1-bedroom condo 3 miles from the hospital. It's the first place I've ever owned. The floors are original hardwood, and one of the kitchen cabinet doors sticks in humid weather, and I have a window above the sink that looks out over someone else's garden. I like it more than I've liked any place I've lived. My uncle came over for dinner the first month I was there. He brought a cutting board he'd made in his garage workshop. Maple, with my initials inlaid in cherry wood. It sits on my counter now and I use it every day. She would have been glad, he said, when I thanked him. He meant my mother. I think he was right. I think she would have been relieved more than anything that she'd planned for this, that the plan had worked. I don't speak to my brother anymore. His wife sent me a message about 6 months after everything was resolved, asking if there was any path back, for the sake of the kids, for the sake of what was left of the family. I thought about it for a long time before I responded. I told her I wished them well. I told her I didn't have anger left, which was true. But I also told her that trust isn't something I know how to rebuild with someone who used my grief as a cover while he cleared out what my mother had left me. She didn't respond. That was fine. People ask me sometimes, friends, occasionally coworkers who know pieces of this story, how I got through it. What made me pursue it instead of just letting it go? And the honest answer is that my mother worked 40 years to leave me something. She drove a car that made that noise above 50 miles per hour, and she packed her lunch every day, and she kept a spreadsheet of her grocery bills. She did all of that carefully and quietly, and she loved me in the methodical way that careful, quiet people love, by making sure that after she was gone, I would be okay. I couldn't let that go. Not for his comfort. Not to keep the peace. I want anyone out there watching this who's in a similar situation, who suspects something is wrong but is afraid of what happens if they start asking questions, to hear this. The asking is worth it. Get a second opinion on the documents. Call a probate attorney. Find out who your parent trusted enough to hold a copy of the real will. The answers might not be what you hope for, but they'll be the truth, and the truth is the only place anything solid can be built. My mother knew that. She built her whole life on it. I'm trying to do the same. And if you've been through something like this, or you're going through it right now, let me know in the comments. I read every one. And wherever you're watching from, thank you for being here. I've thought a lot about what made Marcus do what he did. Not to excuse it, there's no version of this where I arrive at excusing it, but because I think understanding something is different for forgiving it, and understanding it matters to me. He saw an opening. That's the simplest way I can put it. Our mother died, I was barely holding myself together, and he was the one who knew where the files were and which attorney to call. He had access, and he had timing, and he had the reasonable assumption that I would never look too closely. Grief makes people look away. He counted on that. And for a while, he was right. What he didn't count on was Ray. He didn't count on the fact that our mother, careful, methodical, quiet woman that she was, had already thought through the possibility that someone might try to take advantage of the chaos that follows a death. She didn't say Marcus's name when she handed Ray that envelope. She just said she wanted someone outside the immediate situation to hold on to it. She planned for a version of events she hoped would never happen. That's not luck. That's a woman who paid attention to who people were, even when it was painful to see clearly. I think about that a lot. The intelligence it takes to love someone and still be honest with yourself about what they're capable of. She never stopped loving my brother, but she stopped trusting him with certain things, quietly, without drama, and she made arrangements accordingly. That kind of clear-eyed thinking is something I'm still learning. Because here's what I know now that I didn't know at 30. The people who take from you are almost never strangers. They're the people who know your schedule, your habits, your vulnerabilities. They're the people you'd never think to question. And that's exactly why the taking is so easy for them and so disorienting for you. When Marcus told me the estate was complicated, I believed him because he was my brother and I was grieving, and it didn't occur to me that someone I'd known my whole life could look me in the eye and lie. That's not naivety exactly. It's just the way most of us are wired. We extend trust to the people closest to us, and usually that's the right instinct. But sometimes it isn't. What I took from all of this, and I mean genuinely took, not the version you tell people at dinner parties, but the thing that actually changed how I moved through the world, is that asking questions is an act of self-respect, not accusatory questions, not paranoid questions, but basic, reasonable, adult questions about things that affect your life. I almost didn't call that brokerage firm. I almost talked myself out of it 3 different times. I told myself it was probably nothing, that I was being suspicious, that Marcus had handled everything, and surely if something were wrong, I would have noticed. But I made the call. And everything that came after, the attorney, the documents, the court order, the condo with the sticky cabinet door, all of it started with one phone call I almost didn't make. Whatever you're sitting on right now, whatever quiet doubt you've been pushing to the back of your mind because it's easier to leave it there. I'm not saying it'll be what mine was. I'm saying it'll be what mine was. I'm saying it's worth knowing. Whatever the answer is, you can handle it, and you deserve to know the truth about your own life. My mother taught me that. Just a little later than either of us expected,